Okay, so welcome to another edition of Friday Frameworks. I'm Amanda Gilchrist. I am Chief Curator and co-founder here at IPN Advisors. And interesting enough, I do have my co-founder, Matt Lay, in the background. He's actually traveling on the road, but we will welcome him in. He might pop in and add some additional notes and thoughts for you as we kind of go through today. But I really want you to take this time to, if you don't have one right now, or if you don't have like a side panel on your screen that you can just pop up and put notes in, either grab a piece of paper and a pen or pop up a note slide on the side and jot you some notes down, because we're definitely going to give you some opportunities to reflect. You'll definitely get the most out of this if you take a little bit of time to reflect on some of the different things we're going to have you pause to think about during this time. Okay, so before I even jump in and get started, I want you to just take that piece of paper and pen that you have and do a very quick pulse check. Okay, I want you to write down one word that describes your team's current culture. And don't write down the frou-frou word. Don't write down the thing that sounds good that you see on LinkedIn. Write down the actual current status, unfiltered word that pops up immediately that describes your team's culture. Okay. And of course, you're probably watching this on YouTube, so feel free, if you want to, also to jot it down below in the comments, because we will be going back, looking at your comments, responding, reading through them. So we want to hear from you. All right. All right. So love it. Go ahead and do that. And so I want you to, during this time, like keep those like brain muscles going, because again, we're going to be reflecting and prompting throughout the session. And this is what you need to know about today. This is not a lecture. It never is. It never will be. This is a working session. So we're going to teach and talk about a framework, give you a little bit of time to diagnose your own team, and then leave with a tool that you can use starting today. And actually, you will use it starting today, because we're going to use it in the session. Sound good? All right. So this is interactive, practical for you to apply. All right. So here's the agenda of what we're going to go through during this time. Okay. Oh, if I can get my control to move it. There we go. All right. So today's agenda, we're going to go through a driving question, something to just kind of continue to get your juices flowing as we get into the content. And then we're going to talk about the 4 stages of psychological safety. You'll have an activity where you can use this gut check tool. So you'll learn how to use it in this session, and then you can continue to use it. Anytime you think you need to do a gut check, I'm going to say it's easier if you schedule in those times to do a gut check. And then we'll have a little bit of discussion and talk about what next steps can be for you. And just a quick reminder, we'll always give you a copy of the PDF for any of the takeaway tools that we do for the sessions. Okay. Okay, so the driving question that we're going to lean into for today is, what changes, differences between people from friction into flow? I want to give you a second to think about that before I tell you what it is. What changes, differences between people from friction into flow? All right. So that thing that changes from friction into flow, trust. But if you're curious and you're an inquiring mind, you'll think about this next thing. How do you actually build that trust, right? We know trust is important, but many times people can feel really stagnant, incapable, unaware, don't really know where to start. And just how do we even begin to build trust? Okay, so trust is the actual currency of teamwork. And considering that as the currency, it's interesting that no one actually talks about how to build it. So we're going to do that. And this, we're not, yes, it is the 4 stages of psychological safety. It is a theory, but it's also a diagnostic tool. So by the end, you'll know exactly where your team is stuck and why. Okay. You'll use that gut check tool for that quick self assessment. And you're going to keep using that so you can keep a pulse on where your team is, right? So you always have a starting place for where you continue to build that trust to move people forward. All right. So if you think about your team right now, you've got different working styles, different communication preferences, different ideas about how things should get done. Sometimes those differences create friction, tension, misunderstandings, conflict, but sometimes those same differences create flow, innovation, creativity, and better solutions. And so when you have the trust, right, it's one of those things that allows the team to move forward into that space of innovation, creativity, and better solutions. Okay. And so we're going to continue to actually show you how to build that. All right. So the first stage, stage 1, we're going to have a question at each one of these. Okay. So stage 1 is that inclusion safety. The main question, the prompting question is actually, can I be me here? All right. Remember, these are progressive. They're going to build on each other. You can't skip stages, which is why we're starting at stage 1. Right. And this is the question that people are asking themselves, like, can I be here? This is the foundation, which is why we say right here, foundational level. Do people actually feel like they belong? Can they show up as themselves? Are they performing a version of themselves that feels safe or professional? And what that looks like in practice is people actually greet and acknowledge each other, not just transactionally, but with genuine curiosity. I'm a quick advocate to say we get into the habit of exchanging pleasantries. And so if the constant exchange in the work environment is, oh, how are you doing? Good, I'm fine. How are you? Good. Right. Most of that happens in your unconscious mind. That means we're not intentionally engaging with each other. It is transactional. It's not curious. So when we start to pause and be curious and say, no, really, how are you? How are things? How are your kids? How are your family? Asking more particular questions. What it also looks like, new voices are welcomed into conversations without having to fight for airtime, where team members share who they are openly, their interests, their communication styles, their needs, and mistakes don't lead to this sort of like judgment or distance, right, of being an outsider. And then there's the warning signs. And we particularly put the warning signs up here because sometimes you really need to pay attention to the warning signs to know where you are. And so here's some warning signs that you don't have that inclusion safety. With that high conformity, everyone looks, sounds, acts the same, right? It's almost a little robotic. Then there's the surface level relationships. Again, the statement I said, oh, how are you doing? Fine, fine, I'm good, how are you? People are polite, but there is no actual real connection happening there. And then that professional mask. So people say things like, I can't really be myself at work, or I have to be this professional version of myself at work. And how are we even labeling that professional? And so if you don't have stage 1, nothing else works. People won't learn, they won't contribute, they won't or challenge if they don't feel like they fundamentally belong. And so this is foundational. No one ever built a house that continued to stand without a foundation. Someone probably tried to build a house without a foundation, but it will collapse at some point, right? You need the appropriate foundation, okay? And so the next part that's super important is stage 2, the learner safety. That leading question here is, can I grow here? So once people feel like they belong, then we move to stage 2, that learner safety. And this is not about whether or not people feel safe to admit that they don't know. I can recall a time where I would sit and feel like I had to know the answer to speak up in a room, not just be curious and ask a question, not just say, well, I'm not quite sure. Or I didn't even feel comfortable saying, like, I don't know, let me get back to you. So, can someone say, I don't understand without feeling stupid? Can they ask for help without being seen as incompetent? And so, learning safety looks like, I don't know yet, feels normal to say, right? I'm not hesitating. I'm not thinking about, should I, shouldn't I? Almost like we're playing double dutch, right? If you know what double dutch is. That shows my age. And then asking for help, right, is seen as a strength, not a weakness. We're expecting, I'd much rather you come ask me the question than to toil on your own. So the learning curves, they're named, they're supported. Nobody expects this instant expertise. We're modeling as leaders curiosity, we're modeling humility, and we ask questions, not just answer them. And so mistakes are also treated as like useful data, not this character flaw. You don't know what you're doing. Your question is stupid, right? If if our questions become a character flaw rather than allowing those mistakes to be treated as useful data, what's the likelihood that someone's going to continue to ask those questions so they can grow? And so the warning signs here are that you're stuck at stage 2. Nobody asks questions in the meeting. Everybody nods. Nobody clarifies. Mistakes. Oh, I'm going to keep that hidden, right? I'd rather you not know. They'd rather fake it than admit that they need help. And then that experimentation is low, which means innovation is likely low. So nobody's trying new things because failure is too risky, right? We're not treating failure as the thing that it is. It's a growth opportunity. So here's the truth. This is where most teams plateau. They've got inclusion safety. People feel like they belong, but they never built learner safety. So the team stays polite, we stay safe, and we never actually grow into a place where we start building real connection. Okay. All right. Next stage. And I hope you're jotting some notes down and thinking about where you're at because you're going to use that soon. All right. So stage 3, right, is that contributor safety. The question here is, can I add value here? This is where things can tend to get interesting because contributor safety is about whether or not people feel like their input matters. It's one thing to speak up and ask a question or give a thought, but how are we receiving that? Do they feel like it matters? Not just, am I allowed to speak, but does my voice make a difference? And so here's what that contributor safety looks like. People know where and how to contribute. The roles are clear, workflows are transparent, ideas are welcome and built upon, not just collected and ignored, right? We put it over in a pile, we never revisit it again. Tasks match people's strengths and interests. Okay. I like to say, I'm going to say that one more time because I think that's very important. Tasks actually match people's strengths and interests. Effort is seen, not only outcomes. Okay. The workflows and decision-making process is clear. No one's guessing where they fit, what am I supposed to be doing, how am I supposed to be doing it? Can I even ask a question about how I'm supposed to be doing it? And of course, we give you the warning signs, right? Here are warning signs that you don't have the contributor safety. The same 3, 4 people dominate every discussion, every meeting, while everyone else is silent. And in some places that I've even experienced personally, there's usually only 1 or 2 that dominate every discussion, and it could be a 30-person team. Ideas come from the top. So leadership talks, everyone else takes notes. If someone does happen to talk, right, then leadership rips it apart, tears it down, and then everyone takes note. Oh, I definitely can't talk, right? So newer or quieter members, they actually stay on the margins. They're included, they might be learning, but they're definitely not contributing. And so this is the stage where a lot of like nice, seemingly nice cultures tend to get stuck, right? And when I say seemingly nice, right, this psychological safety, right, there's a reason that there's 4 stages. So stage 3, you're getting better, but there's still more room for growth. How can you get to the culture that is going to allow people to fully show up as themselves, innovate, be creative, ask questions, learn, contribute, etc.? So everyone's polite, Everyone's learning together, but the same people are doing all the heavy lifting. And that's not sustainable, right? And usually when those people are doing all the heavy lifting, they're not supporting or teaching other people who want to contribute how to do things, right? They're just saying, figure it out on your own, can't really ask the question, and we just move on. Okay. So think about where your team could possibly be in this area. Are people allowed to speak, or does their input matter, right? Are they emphasizing, are we calling out that our culture is a nice culture, but it still needs some growth so that people feel comfortable enough to contribute? All right, next stage. This is stage 4. Okay, this is the holy grail, as I would say, is challenger safety. And so the question here is, can I challenge the status quo? This is the highest level of psychological safety. It's not just about belonging or learning or contributing. It's about whether people can respectfully disagree. Can they push back on the ideas? Can they challenge leadership? Can they say, I think we might be headed in the wrong direction, without being labeled as the difficult, non-compliant person, right? And what challenger safety actually looks like is that that disagreement is safe and it's respectful. So people can say, I disagree without fear of retaliation. Like leaders actually invite critique and receive it gracefully. They ask, what am I missing? And they mean it, right? We can tell if they didn't mean it by, because if I ask for it and then I jump back on you and say, well, you don't really get it, you don't understand, right? Instead of being curious and clarifying and saying, that's interesting. Tell me more, right? Something very simple that we can miss, right? Challenges actually improve decisions. So dissent isn't something that's seen as being disloyal. It's seen as rigor, pushing things forward. Those concerns, they're addressed directly. Nobody's tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. We're not keeping secrets. We're not having side conversations. And the questioning actually shows commitment and not resistance. But here are the warning signs that you don't have challenger safety. Some of them, right? Groupthink. Everybody agrees too quickly. There's no debate. There's no friction. There's no question. There's no challenge. There's a yes people culture, right? And some people who proclaim to be leaders actually do prefer the yes people culture. But how is your culture and your organization being stalled by only leadership talking and everyone nodding? Okay. And then also the innovation stall. So nobody's pushing boundaries and nobody's taking risks. Okay. You cannot ever skip to stage 4. You can't ask for challenger feedback if people don't feel safe learning. You cannot expect that there's going to be dissent if people don't feel like their contributions matter. Okay. So the important thing that we're hoping to leave with you here is, I think I moved this around. So I think I'm going to go to the next slide and share this with you, is this critical reality. And then we'll go back to the workplace insights. So this critical insight, the reality, is that the stages are sequential. And I've said that several times, but I keep repeating it because the goal is for you to retain it. You can't skip, okay? The common mistakes, which I just noted, is asking for that feedback when people don't feel safe learning, pushing for contribution, expecting the innovation without the psychological safety. So the work that is cut out for us as leaders is build each stage intentionally and in order, because that is the only way you actually get to stage 4. Now, I want to share a couple of statistics with you, which I think are super revealing and important. And there's like a million more. However, we are not going to have, we wouldn't have time to talk about all of those. Okay. All right. So, back. I don't want you to see that yet. Okay. So the workplace and mental health. So the reality, okay, is that 89% of employees with mental health issues say work impacts their well-being. And I've heard several leaders before in different work environments, ones that I've worked in, ones that I've consulted with, to say, it's not our job we're not therapists. We can't we can't manage people's mental health for them, right? And what that lets me know, right, is many times people aren't resistant to that. They just don't feel equipped. But when you realize 89% of employees with mental health issues say work impacts their well-being, I want you to think about why. It's because 1/3 of our adult life is actually spent at work. So if I spend 1/3 of my adult life at work, that means that majority, like as a matter of fact, that my work environment has more impact on my mental health than going to see a therapist once a week. And case in point, yes, I'm a licensed clinician. I've done therapy. I still sometimes do therapy. And this is absolutely true, right? Someone can come see me for an hour a week or every other week, and it's not going to do anything because they spend a good bulk of their time in an environment that is chaotic. Okay. When you don't have psychological safety, this is where these statistics become much more relevant and you start to see them show up in your workplace. Okay, 12 billion working days lost yearly to depression and anxiety. And then 55% experiencing depression say work is a contributing factor. Again, there's much more data out, and I challenge you to go look at a few things or reach out to me and I'll send you some more relevant data on this. But this is real. Psychological safety is necessary. And so you have much more of an impact on how your employees experience work. You have much more an impact on their life. And so if you can impact their life, imagine what the psychological safety is doing for their work output. Okay. So now we go to this tale of two differences. Okay. It's and this is before we look at the full model. So I'm still going to show you the full model, but I want to show you this because it ties it all together. Matt, I'm going to credit this to Matt because his brain works in a very creative way, right? So in this, right, awareness, people don't actually know. Actually, when differences on a team turn into friction, it's usually because one of two things are missing, right? So awareness, people don't actually know each other's differences, okay? They are, so let's see if it'll give me, there we go. They are operating blind. Someone's quiet in meetings and you assume they're disengaged, when really they actually might just be a processor who needs time to think, okay? The other thing that could be missing is, if it'll click for me, permission, okay? So people know the differences, but they don't have permission to honor them. So if you know someone prefers, let's say, async communication, but the culture demands real-time, quick Slack responses while they're in the middle of doing something that requires intensive mental load, so their preference gets steamrolled, that's where the permission is extremely important here, all right? So the formula essentially is that awareness plus permission, okay, it doesn't love me, equals respect. So when you have both, right, when people know each other's differences and they have permission to work within them, the differences stop being friction. They now become flow. They become the competitive advantage. And so this is what psychological safety does. It gives people permission to really show up fully and create the conditions where differences are strengths and not abilities. Okay. And so for one moment, I want you to just think about on your team, which is missing more? Is it awareness or permission? And even though I said which is missing more, if you realize there's a equally huge deficit in both, jot it down and jot it down in depth. What are you noticing? Where is awareness and permission lacking? All right. So now I'm going to go into the full diagram to like bring it all together. This clicker does not love me and I don't love it back. This is another discussion prompt, actually, before we get to the full model. And this is what I was actually just saying, like, think about actually, if you think about just a recent moment, was it a lack of awareness? Was it a lack of permission? So people didn't know each other's differences, or they didn't have, they had a lack of permission. They knew, but they couldn't do anything about it. And I want you to even think about a time that you've had that experience, whether at a work environment or not, okay, where you didn't know someone's differences, or you knew, but you couldn't do anything about it. How helpless does that make you feel? I'd be highly surprised if it didn't. Okay, so case in point, here are the 4 stages. Okay, so when you're looking at this, right, so you see, of course, the inclusion, learner, contributor, and challenger safety stages. And then, of course, you notice the exploitation and the paternalism zones. And also this piece of exclusion here at the bottom. All right, so as you consider that, all right, I'm gonna walk you through really quick how this works. So on the y-axis, we have respect, okay? How much do we value someone for who they are as a human being? And then on the x-axis, we have that permission. How much autonomy, agency, right, do we give people to act, to contribute, or to challenge? And so the 4 stages actually move, as you notice, diagonally across the chart. So inclusion safety starts when the respect, right, is low, and the permission is also low. And then learner safety increases as respect grows. We're higher up here. And then we're giving people that space to experiment and grow, right? The contributor safety hits when the permission here increases. Okay. And people can use their skills now and add value. Then we talked about challenger safety, which is that highest level that we're all striving for. And this is where, like, the innovation threshold lies. There's both high respect and high permission. Okay. So people can challenge the status quo. Now, I bet you notice one area that I did not reference yet, the exclusion. Okay. There's low respect, low permission. At this point, I don't even feel like I belong. I haven't even gotten to stage 1 yet. And then you'll notice, again, we talked about exploitation. Exploitation is low respect, but high permission. So we're using people, but not valuing them. We want them to push out all this work, and they give it to us, right? And then we're saying, go do the great thing, go innovate, go do this. And then my responses to you, how I engaged with you, how I give you feedback on your work, all aligned with disrespect. That's when we're using people, not valuing them. And then that paternalism, right, is where we have very high respect, but low permission. So we care about you, but we don't trust you. So you can do the work, but I kind of want to look over your shoulder while you do it. Or I want to tell you all the ways that it's wrong, or maybe have you pass it back to me, like, at every single segment, so I can check to see where you're at. But the goal here really is to move diagonally, building both respect and permission until you hit stage 4. Okay. So again, these stages are sequential. You cannot skip. Okay. You're going to build each stage intentionally and in order. So if your team doesn't have inclusion safety, don't worry about challenger safety yet. Focus on helping people feel like they belong. If you've got inclusion, but not learner safety, focus on making it safe to ask questions, to admit mistakes, meet people, your team, where they are, and then move them forward 1 stage at a time. Okay. A lot of that is stop and listen. Think about what's healthier here to do. What shouldn't I be doing? Emphasize meeting your people where you are amongst your leaders. Okay. All righty. So we're going to test out the tool. If it will click. This mouse is sticking today and does not love me, but it's okay. All right. So here you have a quick snapshot of the PDF. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can download the quick takeaway. There's a link below. You can go to the website, download that quick takeaway from the website. But here's the 4 stages gut check tool. Our little quick, actually not ours, match genius quick put together after I was having a quick discussion, right? How can people know where they are? So this is going to be your takeaway, but it's a good place to start here, right? To just take a moment to do it while you're reviewing this, okay? So for each stage, you'll see the list of behaviors under what you want and what you want to avoid. So you're going to check the statements that describe your team as they are right now. This is why it's a gut check tool, because it is point in time. So always be honest, because this is just for you. No one sees it yet, but here's a quick way to get a reality check. Then you're going to score each stage. So count your what you want checks, and then you're going to subtract your what you want to avoid checks, and then multiply it by 2. At the bottom, you'll be able to see your total score and what it means. So quickly note, right, if you're in the 5 to 4, it means you got a solid foundation, right? It's safe to build on for the next stage. And this is for each stage. So if you have a 4 or 5 in inclusion safety, it's safe for you to build on the next stage. If you have a 3 to 1, that's a pretty shaky foundation. So proceed with caution, probably require some patching. And we definitely gave you some things to consider so that you can move to that next stage, right? And then the 0 to -2, I'm just going to say this is the place of like condemnation. Do not proceed. You need to do a full review and rebuild, right? And then that -3 or lower, this is a complete health risk, okay? The building has been condemned, and a full rebuild is not an option, okay? So again, you can download that sheet right from our website on the takeaways page. You'll see the link here under YouTube, and take just a few minutes of silent time to complete it. Look at your score of your team, see where you land. Okay, so once you've taken the opportunity to look and see where you land, you now know where you might be struggling, right? You know, okay, clearly I'm not anywhere near stage 4, or I'm barely hanging on to stage 1. Maybe we're not even fully in stage 1 because it's total chaos. We're in exclusion. So once you've done that, it's important for you to think about how you actually apply this, okay? So on the individual level, and this is once you've diagnosed your team, and what I'm missing here, I did put in a discussion prompts that apparently did not move, but actually here's the things I want you to think about. I'm going to see if I can slide it over real quick for you before. Let's see. Okay. We should be reflecting together first. So once you do that gut check, really take a moment to be honest about what surprised you about that gut check score. Because I'm telling you, most people are likely surprised. I haven't met a person yet who was already in a perfect place. Maybe someone's already done culture work, and so they are in a great place. Then think about that stage that most teams plateau at and where your team is actually plateauing. Again, I did note that most teams plateau at 2, but where is your team plateauing? What is keeping your team stuck right now? when you look at the stage that your team is in, what is happening within that that's keeping them stuck? And then if you could focus on just one stage this quarter, which one would you focus on, right? Which one? Obviously, you're going to focus on the one that your score told you to because you can't move to the next stage, right? But when you focus on that one stage, jot down the different actions that you need to take over this quarter, the different things that you need to do to get aligned to be able to move to that next stage. And the most important is, of those actions you need to do for the quarter, what's one that you will take action on this week? Because you start by starting. And the only way to get to a place of full challenger safety, right, is to start where you are and make steps, the small steps daily to move it forward. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this application for you. What does this look like potentially in practice? Not potentially, but some of the ways. And this is not a end all be all. This is just to give you some ideas, right? There are 3 levels of application. So you diagnose where your team is. This application happens at 3 levels. You're going to model vulnerability first. You can start this. Obviously, it's almost, I don't know what time of day you're watching this. So if it's the beginning of the workday, start it today, right? No pressure, start it today. Model vulnerability first. Share your mistakes before asking others to share theirs. Thank people publicly when they disagree with you. So you're making that dissent feel rewarded and not something that is a complete risk. You're asking, like, what am I missing in every major decision, and actually listening to the answer. In fact, being curious to have them tell you more. And then you're going to reward good questions, not just good answers. Celebrate the curiosity. You can actually help people to start asking, not only asking questions, but even asking better questions. All right. The next level of application is on the team level. So on the team level, here's what this can look like for building rhythms. You could run quarterly stage audits using the gut check tool to track your progress. You can create no interruption norms for meetings. Let people finish their thoughts. Don't jump in, because jumping in inevitably makes that person feel as if what they had to say wasn't valid. It doesn't matter. We don't care, right? Explicitly invite the quieter voices instead of the same 3, 4, or 5 that might dominate. Say, hey, Matt, I'd love your take on this. By the way, I'm sure you've met Matt. If you haven't met Matt, go back and watch some of the previous frameworks. Matt is going to give his thoughts and opinions, okay? He's not a quiet voice, but we love the fact that he's not a quiet voice. And so the other thing, right? Assign rotating devil's advocate roles in planning sessions. So you're going to make challenge expected. It's almost like encouraging red teaming. How can we poke holes in this thing, right? To make sure that we're coming up with the most creative, innovative, practical solution for our team. All right. And then finally, application at the organizational level. All right. You're going to tie that you can tie the psychological safety metrics to a leadership performance review. Make it matter, right? Celebrate the challenger behaviors in all hands meetings, right? So maybe there's a challenging the status quo award, right? Show what good looks like. Show that we encourage that dissent. You can also build feedback systems. Feedback is a gift. So these systems that reward dissent, not just compliance. And then track not just what gets done, but how safely people can contribute. You can think about how many people easily, you could probably ponder in your head. You don't even got to write everybody's name down. You can think like, who contributes? And if it's not everybody on the team, we still got work to do, right? No matter what, everyone should be at a place where they feel safe to contribute. So the key in all of this in the application is to start where you have control. You might not be able to change I'm not going to say might not. You definitely will not be able to change the organization tomorrow. Okay. But you can change how you show up as a leader today. And that is one of the most impactful ways to begin change. People start to follow you. Okay. Start with those individual actions. All right. So we already did our quick reflection, but here's a quick note that I want to share. Okay. So, of course, we went through all the stages of like psychological safety, noting you cannot skip a stage. Okay. Remember, it's not built in a day. It's in the micro moments. It's in every engagement that we have. The question you ask, the mistake you admit, the disagreement or the conflict that you welcome. If you haven't read Radical Candor, it's great. The person you invite to speak. You don't need permission. You don't need a massive culture initiative or transformation project. You just need to start with you and start small. So take that gut check tool, use it again. If you didn't get to use it while you're reviewing it today, use it soon in this week, and then share it with your team or other leaders. See where you are, and then focus on the stage where you're struggling. Okay. That stage that if you're not at 4 or 5, you cannot move forward. Anything below that, you need to work, right? There's shaky foundation, or either the building is completely condemned and you got to rebuild. So focus on just one thing in that area and start the building. Okay. So again, you have the ability to rewatch this as many times as you need to. We appreciate you for taking a look. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, because this means you're contemplating doing the hard work of building your teams so that people aren't just performing, they're actually thriving. Okay. So go build something that's worth belonging to. Oh, final note. If you need additional support, you have questions, click the or scan the quick QR codes and schedule some time with myself or Matt. Chat with us. Let us know your thoughts if you're struggling to identify that first quick mini task, or if you think you need a little bit more help, or you want to know how to make it even more practical. Schedule a quick 20-minute call with us. We're happy to talk about it with you, because this is so important. You are literally changing lives, not just your business, not just how it runs, but you're changing the lives of people, right? Because they spend so much time with you. All right, so go make it great and continue doing the hard work of building your teams.